Do I have enough coffee left here? Yeah, okay. So I've already had half a cup of coffee, and I'm hoping that there's enough left so that I can drink enough to stay awake. I have a lot to do today and way too much going on. And even though it's the middle of the night, I've had to force myself awake, drink a lot of coffee, and start getting down to some unpleasant tasks that are not my choice or my choosing, but that I have to do in order to get other things done as a result. So while I'm sitting here sipping my coffee and it's bitter, I don't have any sugar, so I'm just drinking it kind of straight. I'm fascinated and even just almost obsessed with the human brain. It is not just an organ, it is a creation that is beyond anything that I think could have ever developed by chance, sort of like as a random product of evolution. And as somebody who worked as a master's level research scientist for 18 years, verifiably, between 1995 and 2012, I worked as a master's level research scientist and co-authored over 14 published scientific studies that were selected for publication in some of the highest end scientific journals on the planet, including 2 research studies that I co-authored in the journal Nature. If you Google the journal Nature, it is one of the most prestigious and hard to be accepted into scientific journals on the planet. It's also one of the most widely recognized and the most well-known. So when I talk about intelligence and what makes people smart, I kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. I had enough intelligence when I was doing my undergraduate studies to have successfully completed a 4-year bachelor's degree in biological sciences without, any kind of major issues, and then was admitted into a 6-year full-time PhD program for clinical developmental psychology that accepted only 20% of applicants. There was a 8-year time gap between me finishing my bachelor's degree as a 21-year-old. So I was one of those kids who just zipped through college. I didn't take any time off. I didn't have to take any breaks or, go to Europe for a year because I was stressed out. I was able to very efficiently and successfully manage the many demands of a 4-year bachelor's program, not just a 4-year bachelor's program, but one in the hard sciences, where I was taking physics, physical chemistry, organic chemistry, regular chemistry, anatomy and physiology, all kinds of other scientific courses, biostatistics. And I was able to manage all that while doing student government and being on the cheerleading team and participating in the Miss Massachusetts pageant and doing some modeling stuff on the side. No, legitimate modeling. I wasn't ever like any kind of a stripper or anything like that for the stupid perverts who hate stalk my channel. I was a very clean kid. I did Warriors for Christ, stuff like that. And right now I'm dealing with some very stupid medical professionals who unfortunately have been assigned to be my medical providers. I obviously don't have any control over who or what my insurance company throws at me in terms of physicians. These are people who should know better, but they are surprisingly stupid. And the last time I checked, stupid people or people who have, let's say average IQs, right? Which nobody will admit to having because everybody thinks that they have above average IQs. But by definition, most people are at the average IQ level. I've had my IQ tested as part of my PhD program's clinical training. We all had to test each other's IQs as PhD students. And when mine was tested several times by fellow students, I always fell within the 98th percentile for overall full-scale IQ, and was actually higher than that in some of the individualized IQ subsections. And yeah, the full-scale IQ average was 98. So you can do the math on that one. Oh, no, you can't, because you're one of the pathetic retards who hate stalks my channel and makes nasty comments on my videos, and you'll never know anything about me because the only thing that you do know is what I say in these videos, which most of you are too stupid to understand anyway. But back to intelligence. Unfortunately, I seem to be more intelligent than the medical providers who have MD degrees and who are supposed to be accurately treating my medical problems. So the last time I checked, post-concussive syndrome was not in the DSM. The DSM does not make any mention of medical problems other than Axis 1 disorders, which are schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, autism. Those are Axis 1 disorders. And I know that post-concussive syndrome is not in the DSM because it is not a psychiatric issue. It is a cluster of symptoms that many, if not most people, experience on a gradually decreasing basis after having sustained some type of a concussive head injury. A concussion is a head injury where your brain gets literally knocked against your skull. And some people have severe symptoms after that kind of an injury. Some people lose consciousness. Some people start temporarily losing their memory, so they don't remember what they did yesterday, for instance. I was very fortunate when I did get my concussions not to have had any of those issues. In fact, my memory is fantastic. I can remember everything I did yesterday and last Monday. I could tell you what I did last Monday. I had a Zoom meeting, I think at 1:30. I also had another phone call screening at 4 p.m. Did some cleaning, called my dad. I can remember what I did most days. So my short-term memory and my long-term memory have not been affected. I can tell you what I did the day after my sister was brought home from the hospital when I was 3 years old. I remember that day. My mother was not in a good mood and was obviously dealing with now 2 little kids. And I remember just kind of being there like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? So my memories are intact and has not been affected by any kind of post-concussive issues. But the post-concussive issues that I do have are related to what many people experience, which is headaches. If you have had any kind of concussion, you will have headaches for a while. Sometimes it goes up for up to 5 years after your concussion. And the headaches result in sleep disruptions. So that is a cluster of symptoms that is medically related to a physical injury, right? It's kind of like breaking your leg and then now you have knee problems for a while or maybe permanently, right? Or you've had a hip surgery and then your ankle doesn't feel right because your hip is all out of whack and you have to walk funny on your ankle. That kind of thing. My medical providers, I don't know if they're like political activists or something. I have a new physician now, and she has a physician assistant who I've actually been seeing for a few years, who are now suddenly deciding that my occasional sleep problems, and right now, this is not a sleep problem, this is me waking up early and having to get stuff done, is some kind of a psychiatric issue. They think or maybe confuse or don't know the difference between trigeminal neuralgia, which I sustained as a result of my first concussion back in 2016. It is damage to the trigeminal nerve that goes up the back of your neck. It's not a psychiatric issue, folks. It is a physical injury. A physical injury is not a psychiatric issue, even if the injury is to your head. Because psychiatric issues are by definition not physical, they're mental. They are things like personality disorders, right? The urge to kill people, that's a psychiatric issue. Bipolar disorder, that's a psychiatric issue. It's not resulting from any kind of a physical adverse event, like an injury, like falling down the stairs. Hitting your head on something does not mean that you're going to be crazy at any point thereafter. It means that you might or might not experience a standard, confirmed, and reproducible set of symptoms that most, if not all, patients encounter after having had that type of injury. So I didn't have any memory loss following my concussions. I did not suddenly develop a different personality. I didn't start imagining that there were unicorns under my bed and that I was a leprechaun. I didn't start accurately or inaccurately assessing people as fairies and aliens. I didn't suddenly start believing, that UFOs are flying over my building. I remained very soundly and solidly grounded in reality. And yet, my medical providers are conflating or maybe deliberately fabricating psychiatric issues, piggybacking those onto the fact that I have post-concussive syndrome. I have trigeminal nerve damage in the back of my neck that goes up into the lower temporal lobe of your brain, and it causes headaches. Headaches are not a psychiatric issue. They are very real pain. And a lot of research has gone into identifying what causes headaches. And the one conclusion that they know is that headaches are not imaginary. It is real physical pain stemming from some type of overactivation of the nerves in different parts of your brain. That is a physical problem, not an imaginary mental health issue. My stupid providers are almost trying to create psychiatric issues that I don't have. So I'm making this video right now on purpose because there's a lot of miserable, rejected stalkers and haters out there who say things like, oh, she makes videos in the middle of the night. She's completely psychotic and manic. No, I don't have those issues. As I've explained, I have to be up very early tonight. I'm drinking coffee to try to wake up. Otherwise, I would be actually sleeping comfortably in my bed right now at 2:30 in the morning. But because I have so much on my plate for today, and today is Friday, and it is the day before a long weekend, I've got way too much stuff to do to sleep in until 8 or 9 a.m. I do have to be up in the middle of the night. I have to travel out of state later today. I have to pack my luggage. I have to deal with an inspection. So for the pathetic haters out there, and I'm starting to wonder if that doesn't include my medical providers, the psychiatric issues that you desperately wish that I was experiencing are purely the result of your imagination and of your own mental health issues. When people have to make up psychiatric issues that you verifiably and medically do not have, then they are the ones with the psychiatric issue. They are the ones who are demonstrating some type of an emotional problem where you're concerned. That's sad, and it's a sign of inferior intelligence. Intelligent, well-adjusted, mentally healthy people do not have to make up lies about other people simply because they have some kind of resentment or jealousy towards that other person. Resentment and jealousy are psychiatric issues that anyone can suffer from, including medical providers. Retaliation, the need to bring somebody down, are mental health issues that are emotionally based and triggered by things such as politics, religion, somebody's skin color, etc., and that cause even otherwise irrational professionals to engage in harmful and deceptive behavior towards other people. I'm not saying that that's what my providers are doing. I'm saying that they're fabricating psychiatric issues that I verifiably do not have. They never told me what psychiatric issues they think that I do have because I don't have any, and they know that. What they do is they take what you tell them about your medical pain, verifiable physical pain stemming from a physical, real-life injury, the type of pain that most people who have had that injury report experiencing, and they turn it into a psychiatric issue. So again, the last time I checked, concussions and post-concussive syndrome, which is not a psychiatric issue. If you look it up and Google it, fucking retards, post-concussive syndrome has a large range of common symptoms such as headaches, head pain, sleep disruptions, changes to your normal sleeping pattern, such as being up later or waking up earlier or not being able to sleep more than 2 hours because you have head pain, memory loss, but that's not something that I ever experienced. What are some other things of post-concussive syndrome? I mean, like any syndrome, it can range from severe to mild. Some people have symptoms just for a few months. Some people have symptoms for years. I was lucky that I didn't lose any memory capacity. I was lucky that I didn't lose any cognitive capacity. In fact, my cognition seems to have gotten better over the last few years, and I'm working at professional opportunities right now that I probably would not have been able to do a few years ago. My mind seems to be sharper, and I am back into the field where I was as a PhD student 18 years ago. I am doing work that is at the PhD level. So the post-concussive syndrome, in my case, has not resulted in a cognitive decline or memory loss. It has resulted in headaches and sleep disruptions, such as not being able to get to sleep early at night, right? Or then having problems waking up early in the morning because I couldn't get to sleep early enough. I think that's pretty common. And headaches are the result of damage to the trigeminal nerve, which is a physical nerve that runs up the back of your neck and goes onto your temporal lobe. And the medical providers are sitting there saying, that's not a medical problem. That's a psychiatric issue. Really? So when you have post-concussive syndrome and you have sleep disruptions, that's some sort of psychiatric issue, even though none of it is listed in the DSM. And the DSM is the Bible for any type of psychiatric problem or psychological issue or emotional disturbance, such as jealousy, pathological stalking, obsessive haterness. Yeah, that's not in the DSM either, haterness. But it might be part of a cluster of diagnostic criteria for certain actual disorders in the DSM, haterness, also known as jealousy and resentment. I think that's what I'm dealing with, but not on my end, from the providers who keep trying to make up psychiatric issues that I don't have. And again, I'm up at 2:30 in the morning, not because I'm having a sleep disruption right now, not because I'm manic or psychotic, because I never have been. I'm 52 years old and never had to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist at any point in my life. And I have been regularly seeing doctors for many medical problems, such as sports injuries, concussions, flu, vaccinations, routine checkups, what else? Ankle injuries, just normal stuff, skin problems throughout my entire life. And most of those providers were not miserable haters who tried to fabricate psychiatric issues that I didn't have, which is why at 52 years old, for the very first time in my life, I have some highly unqualified doctors who are like, oh, you can't sleep? Oh, you had a concussion a few years ago? That's a mental health issue. No, it's not. It's a mechanical, physical, scientific issue, you pathetic morons. It's kind of making me wonder what the admissions criteria are for medical schools these days. Last time I checked, I was barely able to get into a medical school myself. In fact, when I took the MCAT back in 2000, my score was not high enough for me to believe that I would get into medical school, so I never even applied. I took the MCATs, and I was looking at my scores going, what kind of a chance do I have to get in? I don't know. Maybe I should just go into psychology instead. And I did. I got into a PhD program for clinical psychology that accepted only 20% of all applicants, and I was in that 20%, which meant that maybe I was smarter than I thought I was. But apparently the medical providers were trying to tell me that my post-concussive headaches and sleep disruptions are psychiatric problems, were dumber than I was and probably got into medical school on some type of a lowered expectations situation, right? I mean, they do have that going on these days. They're lowering the standards for admissions to medical schools and law schools because people are becoming more and more dumbed down for reasons that I am still speculating on. Maybe too much social media. I am 52. So when I was in college, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have smartphones. We had giant desktop computers that looked like TVs. And if you wanted to use a computer, you had to physically go into a special room called a computer lab. Sometimes people had computers in their homes. And, by the time the 90s rolled around, a lot of people did. I had a little laptop that was like this thick. It was literally 2 inches thick, but it was a laptop. And if you wanted to connect it to the internet, you had to find a phone jack and plug your laptop into the phone jack. So my generation, Generation X, we grew up without a lot of social media, and that probably is what makes us smarter these days than people who were born in the 80s, which I believe my physicians at this point were born in the 80s, and that's probably what I'm dealing with, the millennial generation who grew up on a lot of social media And maybe now that's why the medical schools are just dropping their admissions requirements. And that's why my medical provider thinks that when I report that I can't sleep because of trigeminal nerve pain and post-concussive issues that are normal and routine for most people who've had concussions, she thinks it's a psychiatric issue. Yeah, but you know what? The DSM doesn't lie. The DSM doesn't fabricate non-existent psychiatric issues. And again, the last time I checked the DSM, which I had to memorize as part of my PhD program training, post-concussive issue and trigeminal damage were not in the DSM.